Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Spring Tale from We Creatives. I'm Kat Sheridan from your L&P team, and today we are celebrating all things Irish and, of course, St. Patrick's Day with our very own take on a little-known Irish fairy tale. Today's Spring Tale is all about strength and the different forms it can take. So settle down, make yourself comfortable, and have a listen as I tell you the tale of Finn McCall and the Giants Causeway. Once upon a time, many, many years ago, there lived an Irish giant called Finn McCall. He lived in Northern Ireland in a cave on a beach surrounded by rocks and cliffs for as far as the eye could see. Now Finn was a very, very proud giant. He was proud of his home, he was proud of his height, but most of all he was proud of his strength. He thought he was the strongest in all the land. And one day, Finn was taking a stroll on the beach where he lived, when all of a sudden he heard a huge, booming Scottish voice calling from across the sea. That voice belonged to another giant, a Scottish giant called Brendannon. We'll call him Ben today. And he was not being nice to our Irish giant Finn. Ben was shouting and teasing and taunting Finn all the way across the sea from Scotland, calling him little and meek and weak. Well, Finn was not going to take that lying down. But before he could shout back, Ben had uttered a challenge. Fight me, and we'll see who's the strongest out of you and me. Now there was one problem with Ben's plan, for you see Scotland and Ireland are separated by a rather large bit of sea. And Ben the Scottish giant had to admit he could not swim. So that was that for that day, you see. Finn stormed home, stomping and slamming and grabbing at rocks as he went. When he got to his cave, he was in such a rage that he started to tear and smash at the walls, pulling down boulders, crumbling and flinging them over his shoulder, behind him across the beach and into the sea. This rage went on for days and days. How dare that Scottish giant question my strength, said Finn. Only when he'd eventually calmed down, he turned around, and to his surprise, in all that rage, Finn had filled a part of the sea. Huge boulders had tumbled in and built up a path right the way across, all the way over to Scotland. That path we call a causeway. Well, thought Finn, now there's no excuse for this giant called Ben. Let him come, let him try, and we will see who is the strongest. Of course, Ben the Scottish giant took up the challenge immediately, stomping across the causeway, charging towards Northern Ireland from across the sea. Only every time he took a step, Finn realized that this Scottish giant called Ben was a lot taller than he'd seemed from far, far away across the sea. He was a lot broader than he'd seemed from standing on that Scottish beach. He looked a lot stronger than Finn thought even he was. And suddenly Finn realized he couldn't fight this Scottish giant called Ben. There was no way he'd win. He looked around the beach. He looked around at the trees. There was nowhere to hide. So he had to hatch a plan. He gathered some trees, he gathered some leaves, he gathered some rocks and built himself a baby's cot. Quite a big one, mind you, because he needed to fit in. And he snuggled down in the cot he built, praying and hoping that that Scottish giant Ben would believe he was asleep. Now, When the Scottish giant arrived on Irish shores, he shouted for Finn as loud as he could, "Where is that coward Finn McCall?" scouring the beach up and down, but no giant was to be seen. Only a giant's baby cot sitting there in the sand, with what seemed like a baby asleep inside. Suddenly, Ben was very, very scared. "Can you believe that's Finn's baby?" he said. "Look at the size of him. If that's the baby child, how big must the adult be?" Ben immediately turned on his heel and started racing back across the sea. There was no way he was going to take on Finn today. And to make sure the giant couldn't follow him, he started ripping up boulders himself and casting them out into the deep, deep, deep sea. "There's no way I'm having that giant called Finn follow me," he said, running all the way back to the safety of Scotland. Well, Finn couldn't believe his luck, and he popped his head up just to watch Ben skipping across the waves, running away. Thank goodness, thought Finn. I better help get rid of this causeway because I don't want him coming back again. And so the giants dismantled the path and never fought again. Now you can still visit a bit of the Giants Causeway. Only 2 very small sections remain. One at the end of the coast of Northern Ireland and the other on the Scottish island of Safa. Isn't that brilliant? You can see the actual Giants Causeway. Now my favourite bit about that story is that actually there were 2 strengths going on there, weren't there? We had the giant's brilliant strength physically pulling up and throwing around boulders, but you also had Finn's strength of mind. He was cunning enough to realise that he could get around this fight if he just came at it a different way. And that is a real strength, thinking about problem solving in a different way. Let's go over to Ailish now and try out our craft for today.
Hi everyone! Wow, that was a good story. What was your favourite part? I really liked when Finn the giant pulled all the bits of rock from the land, threw them into the sea with a big splash, and made the Giants Causeway, a path that he could walk on. Well, just now I'm going to show you how to make some delicious rock buns so that we can build our very own Giants Causeway that you can eat. Are you ready? Let's get started. The things you'll need to make your rock buns are 225 grams of self-raising flour, 75 grams of caster sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 125 grams of unsalted butter cut up into cubes, 100 grams of dried fruit, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of milk, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla essence. You'll also need a mixing bowl, a set of scales, a wooden spoon, a fork, a tablespoon, a teaspoon, and 2 baking sheets with greaseproof paper. Start by lining your baking trays. Use a little bit of butter and then place the baking parchment on top, and do that to 2 trays if you have. Okay, now to start on the rock buns. So we have got our 225 grams of self-raising flour in a bowl. Now can you add in your caster sugar? That is 75 grams of caster sugar into the bowl. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay. With your wooden spoon, can you mix that all around in the bowl so it's nicely mixed up? And then we are going to add our cubes of butter. So this was 125 grams of unsalted butter cut up into cubes. Pop that all in. And make sure that your hands are nice and clean because we're going to put our hands into the bowl. So we're going to rub in the cubed butter into the flour mixture And it's good if you can soften the butter first between your thumb and your finger. Get your hands right in there. One last little go of that. Now I'm going to wash my hands and show you what to do next. All nice and clean again. Now we're going to add in our dried fruit. So I've got 100 grams of sultanas here. I'm going to add those in. Mine are a little bit stuck together, so I'm just going to pull those apart. And using your wooden spoon, can you mix those through? Now let's move this bowl to the side. We're going to need a clean bowl, just a little one, with our egg, our milk, and our vanilla extract. So first things first, you're going to break the egg into the bowl. There we are. Then we're going to add in our tablespoon of milk. Now if you don't have a tablespoon, 3 teaspoons is the same amount. So that's my tablespoon of milk. Then 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. 1, 2. Then with a fork, mix that through. So you're beating your egg, your milk and your vanilla all together. All mixed together, it should look like this. And then we're going to add that in to our dry ingredients. So that's our flour, sugar, baking powder, mixed with the butter, with our dried fruit added. We're going to mix in the egg and the milk. So with our wooden spoon, mix that through. And that's going to help our dough come together. This is when you can add a little bit of extra milk to help bring it together. So I am going to add another little splash. Our dough will come together if you give it a squeeze. It's all joining together, it's not crumbling apart. So what we want to do is, can you get your baking tray and we'll get these ready for the oven. Okay, so bring your mixture in towards your baking tray and we're going to use our hands for this. You could use a spoon if you like, but I'm going to just use my hands. I'm going to go into the bowl, get a bit of a clump of the dough, and then just shape it in my hands to form a ball shape, okay? Pop that down on your tray and give it a little press. And if you do that now for all of your mixture, so once you've used up all your mixture and made them into the rock buns, you should have, my mixture's made about 12, so hopefully you've got a similar number. I've spaced mine out across 2 trays so they've got lots of room around them to grow. In fact, I'm just going to move that one down a bit because these are going to grow into big rocks in the oven. Can you pop those into your oven now and bake for 15 to 20 minutes? You're looking for them to be golden brown, so they will change colour. They're quite pale just now. They're going to go a nice golden brown once they're ready. Now, once your rock buns come out of the oven, leave them on their baking tray for a couple of minutes just to firm up. Then you can transfer them to this, a wire cooling rack if you have. If you don't, you can leave them on their baking tray just to cool down. I'm going to bring these across now And we can assemble these, put them all together to build our Giants Causeway. And you can do this in whatever pattern you would like. Can you imagine Finn the Giant at one side and Ben the Giant at the other side? They walk across, following the path of the Giant's Causeway. And do you remember what Ben did in our story when he came across this way to Finn's cave? Saw how big he was. He thought he was a baby. Thought how big he was. He ran all the way back across to Scotland and he took big chunks out of the path as he went to make sure that Finn couldn't follow back. I'm going to leave these to cool now, and then you can enjoy them. You could have them just as they are, or you can cut them in half, put some butter and jam on like you would a scone. You could have them with some honey or some chocolate spread. It is up to you, whatever you have at home. I hope you enjoy them. Well, that has been a lot of fun, and I hope you've enjoyed our story and activity this week too. I will see you again next time for another spring tale. Bye bye.